morning. What a joy to be here with all of you. If I was asked to rank the number one thing that gives me joy in the work that I do, it's exactly this. It's working with young people, mostly, of course, within my own company, but also in settings like this, helping them track their path. I've been so fortunate to have found Zions Bank 24 years ago, July 22nd of this year. 24 years with the same company. I never would have anticipated that would have happened. But because some of the things that I'm going to share with you in the first part of my presentation today, I followed throughout those 24 years, that path has been extremely rewarding because I've been continuously able to grow and learn, have new challenges, new opportunities, stumble, pick yourself up again. I've taken some zigs, I've taken some zags. The career lattice as opposed to career ladder, as I like to refer to it. And I've been able to do it at a company whose corporate values match my personal values. So let's start with the presentation, but I want to make sure we have plenty of time for questions and answers. So I'm going to make an assignment to Carl Ward because I can see you right here at the corner. Carl Ward is one of our senior leaders here in the entire Logan area. But if you will just kind of raise your hand when we're at quarter till, okay? Also, I want to pre-position as I get started. This presentation is designed to be somewhat interactive. So please, if you have a question, if you have a thought, you want to interject something, as we go through it, jump in. I would just love for that to happen. We're going to talk about leadership and career activism, and I'm going to provide a personal perspective. I'm going to define career activism. I'm going to share 12, they're called new rules for career success. I don't think they're really so new. I'm going to then provide a personal perspective. I will use myself as a case study for you, very honestly, and then time for Q&A. Now, does that meet your expectations? Okay, I saw a lot. That's good, because I'd be in big trouble if you went like this. So thank you. Katharine Graham, who knows that name? She was transformational leader as the editor of the Washington Post and came to the position in a very non-traditional way. So all I'm going to tell you, read her autobiography. It is an absolute inspiration about accidental leadership. Katharine was quoted as saying, "To love what you do and feel that it matters, how could anything be more fun?" That is a great quote that illustrates how I feel about what I get to do every day in my chosen industry and the company I've chosen to work for 24 years. Banks invest in people. They invest in businesses. They grow local economies. We help young couples save for their yet born first child's college education. We help people buy their first home. We help them realize their entrepreneurial dream in starting small businesses. I mean, my list goes on and on and on. To be able to drive through any town and city and look at different buildings and point to them and say, gosh, I had a hand in that. Assisting that dreamer who came up with that idea. It's so rewarding. This is just some of the reason I love this quote. Career activism. It's defining yourself independently from the organization and taking charge of your career path. So, taking it personally, yes, I am very proud to be a Zions banker. I'm very proud to be a banker, but I'm also proud of the skills I have developed over time that are skills that allow me to fare well in other arenas, such as all my community and my industry work. So I'm not just defined by my employer. I'm first defined by myself and my skills. Now, becoming a career activist means that you write your own script. You advocate for your value. It's the confidence to be able to speak to others about your skills and how those skills can make a difference to your organization. It's being entrepreneurial. Starts with knowing yourself, and sometimes that's the hardest part, is to do a self-assessment and do it very, very honestly. What are you good at? What are the contents of your personal portfolio? That's how I look at my skills and attributes. It's my personal portfolio. What makes your heart sing? And what's really important to you? I shared with you right after the introduction that it makes my heart sing to help young people as they're designing their path, their career, their journey. That's something that's very important to me. Now, your personal work ID, what does that mean? It's pretty simple. It's your skills, attributes, interests, values. The job is not who you are. Your job title, that job description, is not who you are. All those other things are your work ID. Your personal portfolio, your technical skills and abilities, your interpersonal skills, financial skills. Trust me, no matter what role you have, there's a certain element you have to have an understanding of financial information and managerial skills. Even if you're not a manager, in business today, in organizations in general, we accomplish so much in teamwork, don't we? Teams produce results. And at any given time, even though you may not be labeled as the team leader, because of your skills and abilities, what do? You step up and you take a lead. You manage because of that skill and ability. Taking stock of your assets and liabilities. Okay, I'm a banker, had to put that in there. I admit it. No quirks that interfere with your effectiveness, and I'm going to come back to that. I've got a great personal story on that. No skills and abilities that need improvement. I've got another personal story. I'll be painfully honest on that one. Clearly describe your own strengths, preferences, and values. Just because you have them doesn't mean they're of value to others unless you can display them effectively. And how do we typically display those things? It's verbally. It's verbally first. That's very often how you get the opportunity then to jump in and display those skills and abilities through action in work. Okay, quirks that interfere with your effectiveness. I had the opportunity, I'm a learning freak. I've just always got to be learning. And I had the wonderful opportunity to participate in a women's global leadership program through the International Women's Forum several years ago. 32 women from across the globe were put into this cohort and went through a 3-year program. Well, we had a 10-day session at Harvard Business School. Okay, quirks that interfere with your effectiveness. Young woman, mid-30s at that point, from Nashville, Tennessee, owned her own construction, architectural, and design company that she had started with one person herself. And she had just completed designing and building the Nashville Opera House. Does she sound successful? Certainly. What an accomplishment. We would walk into these classroom settings, and she had a big tote bag she carried with her. We had one presentation, after another, and throughout the presentations, she would lean down to the side of her chair, open her tote bag, and pull out some kind of snack. She'd open the bag, so you'd hear. She'd put the bag on her lap, and as the presenter was presenting, take a few bites, crinkle, 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 she'd roll the bag over. I'm not exaggerating, folks. Then she'd put it down in her case. 31 of us were thinking, wow, glad that's over. Then she'd lean down again. She'd grab the next one. It was obviously a nervous habit. She wasn't heavy, a very fit-looking individual. What happened the next morning is that everybody scattered. We were all standing out in the lobby having our juice and coffee, waiting for Mercedes to sit down so we could sit as far away as possible. And then at a break, one kind leader said to the group of us in the ladies' room, and Mercedes wasn't there, okay, if we really are leaders, and if we care about her growth and development, we need to have an intervention. So we did. We grabbed her and said, sweetheart, you have no idea what you're doing. We recognize that. But when you munch all day long, it's distracting to the rest of us. She was horrified. Of course, you would be. And so thankful. That ended that distracting behavior. Because of other caring peers that were willing to share that quirk, if you will, she now has changed that behavior and no longer is a snacker and interfering with her effectiveness. Can you imagine going into a client meeting? And she admitted to us, she said, I do this all the time. We thought, how in the world did you get the contract for the Opera House? Knowing skills and abilities that need improvement. I'll use myself as an example. I very effectively, all through high school, all through college, in my educational experience and my personal experience, avoided speaking in front of even small groups of people. My church youth group, I was really, really heavily involved in, and they were always trying to help us build skills, and one of them was speaking. I go, nope, not doing it. Well, you can see what's coming, of course. My first company, about 4 years into my experience there, I received a huge promotion, and one of the primary responsibilities was delivering corporate new changes, new trends coming. I was in retail department stores at the time, to large groups of senior employees. I'd never spoken in front of any size group, and all of a sudden quarterly to 50 senior leaders. Oh, and by the way, I was the only woman in the room. Makes you a little less comfortable on top of never having spoken. I went out and got training. I wanted the job. But you know what, even more so, I think I wanted to overcome that horrendous fear that I felt. That first time I stood up in front of that group, oh my gosh. They deserved a medal, each one of them, for sitting through that. Because I had a script in front of me, and I would read, but someone had told me always make eye contact with your audience. So I'd read, look up. Read. I'm not exaggerating, 45 minutes. So I got training. I got training to develop self-confidence because I developed skill. Now, know what you love. What's important to you? Your personal priorities, your values. I mentioned early in the presentation, 24 years with one company. You know what? It's easy when their corporate values match your personal values. That's easy. Being able to be who you are. Finding an organizational structure that cherishes individuality and the inputs of different people, that allows you to play to your strengths. Now, I mentioned I'd go into 12 rules for career success. So much of this is going to be obvious to you. Ensure your marketability. Think first of all of the people that you work for as your client. It really changes your mindset when you're working with your supervisor. Because when you're working with clients, what do you want to do? You want to deliver to their needs. So if you're effective at determining what it is that your supervisor needs for you to be successful at, so they can be successful, that's thinking as if they're your client. Think of yourself as a product. Sounds kind of cold, but it really isn't. And know what your market is. Think globally today. Oh my gosh, we're not just limited to Logan. We're not just limited to northern Utah. We're not just limited to Utah. We're not just limited to the western United States or the United States. So much of what we can do today because of technology, either for career or for personal opportunities to contribute, it's so easy now. New work and life principles. Gosh, we have got people that work at the corporate level, so for our 11-state organization, that live all over. The president of our company lives in Houston. My boss lives in Phoenix. I've proposed I move to Hawaii, but I think I found their boundaries. And thinking globally really demands that we're all much more adaptable than probably ever before. We must, to be successful in managing our own careers, be able to communicate very, very effectively. We need to capture the listener's attention quickly. That's true verbally, isn't it? What about digitally? How much time do you grant to someone who's speaking to you digitally? For me, it's almost instantaneous. I mean, when I get a text or when I get a cell phone call from somebody that's not already in my contacts, it takes me a split second to hit delete. Split second. And I don't think I'm different than many people. Use words that paint a very vivid picture. And how do you figure that out? Use yourself as a guide. What, in spoken language, what makes you feel that you can see that picture of what they're talking about? Write clearly with impact and zero in on key concepts. Be concise. Again, I'm going to tell a story, quick story on myself. I had a college exam, and it was mostly essay. I'm proud to say I was a very good student. I studied a lot. I mentioned I'm a learner. I thirst for knowledge. I had studied for this exam. It was a subject I was very, very confident in. I read this question, and I had absolutely no idea what the professor was getting at. So what did I do? I wrote and 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 wrote 3 pages. We were asked for a 1-page answer. So when I felt so unsettled. I knew I nailed the exam other than that. I even went back to my dorm room. I pulled out the textbooks, and I didn't get what he was asking. So a couple days later, I get my paper, and here was written on green in the side, if there was a grade called BS, that's what you would earn on this one. But I'm going to give you a B- for effort. Please learn to be concise. I was 19. That's the day I learned to be concise in communicating. One of the reasons my boss and I work very, very well together is we both communicate with one another in bullet points. And whether it's written or whether it's verbal or whether it's on the telephone, whatever, texting, whatever. He speaks in bullet points, I speak in bullet points, and we also do not hesitate to say, well, wait a minute. I want to be clear that I understand what you just said. So we're concise, and we will question one another for clarity. Keep on learning. Stay current in your own field. Courses, reading, skill development, continuous education. There are so many opportunities, especially online these days. It's absolutely extraordinary. And also don't confine yourself to traditional ways of learning. Understand business trends. Test yourself. Do you regularly read business news, world events, etc.? Can you identify 3 trends right now in your chosen field? And can you reassess those 3 trends a week from now? Because you're constantly reading, you're learning about changes. Do you know what new technologies might shape your industry? I mean, mobile has reshaped the banking industry. And that's one of my responsibilities for Zions Bancorporation is all channels. So any way a client, whether they're an individual or a business, can access the bank, I have responsibility for those products. Deposits, loans, branches, ATMs, mobile, and as I often say, whatever else is being developed by someone's 13-year-old daughter in their kitchen right now that we don't know about. How exciting. How very, very exciting. What are threats? Boy, there's a lot of threats to my industry. I saw a hand.
Yeah, so it's really easy to get kind of caught up or swallowed in the news.
Yes.
How much time do you usually spend a day in business trends and business news?
Oh, I love that. I've never been asked that question. An hour.
Wow.
I wake up every morning, and before I work out, I read for an hour. I have news feeds that I get. The preeminent banking industry journal is the American Banker. I read the things that apply to me. I read the American Banker. I read a news feed that I get from the Wall Street Journal. I read a news feed from the Washington Post, the LA Times, and then I also get USA Today online because I have a responsibility for not just business but also for consumers, and there's a ton of consumer information in USA Today. So that hour is dedicated. That's how I wake up. Is reading. Then I hit the treadmill. Now, throughout the day, I'm also watching the news feeds. But for the deep reading, It's an hour dedicated. Every day I do it on weekends too. I love it. I absolutely love it. Now, number 6, prepare for areas of competence, not for jobs. Jobs change. When I look back to 24 years ago when I became a banker, there's a heck of a lot of those jobs that don't even exist anymore. But you know what? There's really extraordinary jobs that exist today that didn't then. And then, like that 13-year-old girl in her mom's kitchen developing the next way that we're going to access our bank right now, it also points to the jobs we're going to have in the future in my industry that I can't even imagine. How exciting. But if you prepare for competencies, just take the first one, leadership. Can you think of a type of organization, community, government, charitable, corporate, small business? Can you think of any entity that doesn't thirst for strong leadership, that doesn't get an advantage from strong leadership? Of course not. Of course not. Competencies, not jobs. Always look to the future, monitoring all those trends. Whoops, I turned us off. Build financial independence. I'm not just saying this because I'm a banker. This makes sense, folks. This makes sense for all of us. 10% of your pre-tax income should, whatever that income is, should be in your back pocket, protected for a rainy day. We should always be rethinking our relationship to money. Now, another personal story here. I had the ability to totally change industries midstream and start over. I'd become an executive with a respectable compensation in retail department stores. And I wanted a change, and I changed to banking. Now, who in their right mind, and by the way, I tried, there was no one, would hire me at my current comp level when I knew nothing about banking? Now, I had the competencies from the previous slide, but because of my family's conservative nature when it came to money, I was able to make that change. Think lattice, not ladders. Measure your progress in opportunities. Don't just think that you're getting ahead if you're getting the next promotion. What about taking on a project that helps you build a new skill? That's utilizing the lattice approach to your career. There are people who are by nature specialists, there are people who are by nature generalists, but we all benefit in life if we can intermingle those two skill sets. And being a ruthless time manager, oh my gosh, none of us ever has enough time for all the things we want to do. So it takes being ruthless about managing your time and also being kind to ourselves. My reading time first in the morning, that benefits my career, but it also feeds me. My exercise, that's how I work things out, is on the treadmill or on the street or on the mountain hiking. Here are some of the ways, and there's a lot more, to be kind to yourself. I also like massages. Winston Churchill, there's nothing wrong in change if it's in the right direction. To improve is to change, so to be perfect is to have changed often. I'm not perfect. I'm going to continue to change. Now, myself as a case study, I mentioned to you already, my first career was running department stores, and I did it all, folks. I unloaded trucks in the dock, I ironed merchandise, I did inventory, I was an operations manager in charge of budgeting, I was a buyer. Oh, doesn't that sound so elegant? It's all about numbers. Understanding the trends, of your shoppers and buying to fit those trends. Vince Lombardi has so many fantastic quotes, but I love this one about family, career, and community. The quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to their commitment to excellence, regardless of their chosen field of endeavor. Now, these are all the states that I have lived and worked in. Haven't hit them all, probably won't. Here are all the educational opportunities that I have had over the years. Really fun, very, very fortunate. Careers, I started at JCPenney. At the time, they were the second largest retailer in the world. Not any longer. Things have changed. Fantastic company to work for. Wonderful, wonderful leadership development. Then, the only bank that would give me a chance was Bank of America in Los Angeles, of all places. Yes, I lived in LA for 17 months, 3 weeks, and 5 days. You think I'm kidding? I counted every single day. It's a great training experience, but what a joy it was the day that Scott Anderson, who was the head of retail at Zions Bank at the time, called me and asked me, would you have an interest in coming to Utah? I'd like to talk to you. I work for Zions Bank. I just came here recently, and we've got a lot of good things going on. Boy, I'm glad I took that phone call. Zions Bank, and now I work for the holding company. My opportunity to give back to my industry. I have served in a number of roles at the Utah Bankers Association. I also ultimately became the chair, the first woman chair of the Utah Bankers Association. Funny story on that, it was actually in the 100th year anniversary of the UBA that I became the first female chair. And the president of the UBA, Howard Headley, said, oh my gosh, what a great tie-in. We've got to do a press release. And I said, Howard, stop. Think about it. It took the UBA 100 years. And he said, oops. What a wonderful way to be able to give back to my industry here in my own state, working with banks of all sizes and all types to help them progress in their missions in their communities, which led me to the American Bankers Association. I've been very active at the federal level with the ABA for, oh my gosh, probably 15 years now. And I now serve as the chairman of the Professional Development Council. That's the training arm of the American Bankers Association. We provide training to all different size banks. Now, the case study, being who I am. Remember we talked about that in career activism? Who I was in department stores. I was a service provider. I was a contributor to each of the communities that I lived and worked in. I was a creator of growth opportunities for the wonderful employees in my stores and my departments I managed. I was a respected and a respectful leader, a person of unquestioned integrity. And I was always proud to say, I work for JCPenney. I work for Riches. I work for Broadway, because their values matched my values. Now, who am I in retail banking? The same person, the same skills and attributes, different industry, but I still get to be me. Preparing for areas of competence, not jobs. We talked about that in career activism. Look at that. I mean, both sides, they're the same. Two totally different industries. But because I prepared myself for competencies, not for an industry or for a job, they transferred so easily. Knowing myself. I've always been a change master. Maybe that comes from being raised by a father who in his career was moved 13 times. No, I went to 13 schools before high school because of my dad's corporate moves. I was always the new kid. Well, when that's the way you're raised and you don't know anything different, hey, it's what it is and you learn to change very, very quickly. But look at all those things. Both sides match, don't they? And then giving back, being able to give back to the communities that I live and work with, and I'm so passionate about. Ralph Waldo Emerson said, "It's one of the most beautiful compensations of this life that no man can sincerely try to help another without helping himself." I've been involved in the community in a number of ways over the years. Even started my own charity to fund housing for homeless veteran mothers with children. There's a lot of federal and state funding for veterans, for homeless veterans, but not for their kids. We hope to get that changed at the federal level. Contributing, volunteering in the community, what a joy. And wow, the unexpected rewards for doing the things that I love to do in the community, in my industry. Without shooting for it, I have received rewards that I never anticipated. Utah Business Magazine, I've been recognized several times. The Utah Commission for Women and Families, what a joy it was to be one of 3 people recognized for making a contribution to women and families in our state. U.S. Banker Magazine, now American Banker Magazine, I've been honored in their 25 most powerful women in business. And my goal is the same as theirs, that there won't be a need in the banking industry to recognize performance by gender. And I hope before I retire, which is no time soon, I hope before I retire, there is no longer a need for that. But my industry is woefully behind in recognizing the talents of 51% of the population and taking advantage of it. See, it's an economic issue too. And then the Salt Lake Chamber, I've also received recognition there. Again, reaping rewards without having to seek them out, for being able to do the things that I love to do, and I had the competencies for working in an industry and for a company whose values match mine. Oh, I got to be on the cover of, it was U.S. Banker then? I hope you can pick me out. You would not have been able to pick me out originally because they fly you to New York. Okay, all these banker women, you know, and they fly you to New York and you've got makeup artists and they're doing your hair and your clothes and all this. And what they did, the makeup artist turned the chair away from the mirror. And I had to just trust. She turned me around and I went, oh! She said, "You love it, right?" I said, "Who is that woman?" And she said, "Oh, you look great." I mean, my hair was like this. I had makeup that was so thick. I went to the editor and I said, "Get this off. I've got one goal. I'll only be on the cover of a magazine once in my life. I want my dad to go, 'That's my kid.'" And I said, "He won't recognize me." So they completely redid me. And there I am. Strategies for success. I recognize my areas of competence, know myself. I've been able to be myself. Charles Kettering. My interest is in the future because I'm going to spend the rest of my life there. My commitment to family, career, and community. Now, questions? Anything on your mind, and I will tell you, anything goes. I'll give it to you the way I see it. Industry-related, banking, economic, trends in the state of Utah. What's on your mind? Oh.
My question's kind of a basic one, but what are some of your favorite books and why?
Oh my gosh. Within my company, I get asked that all the time because I inflict my opinions on books all the time. So people are kind to ask that. I just finished the most incredible story. It's called My Life in Shanghai. It was published, I think, in the late 70s by Mian Cheng. This is about a woman who lived through the Chinese Cultural Revolution, who was in prison for 6.5 years. She was beaten, at times daily. All she had to do is what so many other people in that situation did, which was confess to evils she had not committed. And she would not. She faced death very often on a daily basis to maintain her self-dignity. Oh my gosh, what an inspiration. What an inspiration. That's one of many. But in a world that we live in today, and I won't get political, where there's so much strife and where so often it seems that we can't have productive discourse on disagreement. What a joy to read that book. It gave me hope. It's from a decades ago situation, but it gave me hope. One little teeny tiny woman and her resolve to do what was right. Thank you for allowing me to share that.
Thank you. So the internet and smartphones are kind of changing the banking industry right now. Do you see individual branches, the brick and mortar branches, going away
No.
in the future?
All right. When I entered banking 25 years ago, the ATMs were just really becoming popular. Customers they'd been out for a few years, but customers didn't trust them initially. Finally, there was trust built. And the headlines then in the industry were ATMs are going to put branches out of business. No, we just now have ATMs on every street corner. Then online banking was going to put branches out of business. They haven't. We just now have ATMs and online banking. Then mobile was going to put branches out of business. Telephone banking was going to put branches out of business. But what we will see and what we're seeing already in the industry is we're over-branched. For the way people do business today, I'll tell you what all the research shows. The people who use branches most frequently are businesses and young people when they open their account. Young people will do a lot of research online about different bank offerings, but to open the account, people still today, although I think that's going to change very quickly, they still come in to talk to a real banker to assure the choice that they think they've made is the right one for them. But heavy use by businesses, well, to serve all those businesses out there, you have to have a certain number of buildings. So I know what we're doing within my own company, and again, I'm talking 11 states now, is kind of culling where we have branches within, a real small distance of one another, because people just aren't coming in that frequently anymore. Live teller transactions have dropped. I've got a little bit of feedback. I don't know if that's interfering. The live transactions at my company, on average, the last 7 years have dropped 5% a year. It's spooky. It's so consistent, 5% a year. But the vast majority of that is driven by consumers. We don't need to go into a branch to make a deposit. I can't remember the last time I've done that. Take a picture with my phone and hit send. Now, I care for my 88-year-old dad, so, okay, that is a correction. He won't let me do mobile banking for him, so I make his deposits. Great question. There will be fewer. They are likely to be of two types: large regional hubs like Logan, where you've got all the different specialties. You've got investments, you've got commercial real estate, you've got high-end commercial lending, you've got small business banking, executive and private banking, very specialized mortgage lenders, and then bankers. And then small community branches kind of surrounding on the periphery to provide support. That's my view, and it's what I do almost all day long, every day. Another question? Yes?
Hi. In regards to quirks, I'm wondering how exactly you go about wearing them. I'm a diagnosed OCD, and there's a lot of stigma, and I don't, it's not all that defines me, but I don't know how to introduce myself when there's kind of a problem about it.
Just my personal opinion. So how I would want to be able to interact with you is for you to share that with me. Just absolutely. Yeah. You know, at a very human level. Because we are humans in every situation we're in, even job interviews. You know, but if you can, to an earlier slide, career activism, if you can effectively communicate your value, and oh, by the way, I just want to make you aware, but this is not going to get in the way of me providing value to you. Thank you for having the courage to share that. That took courage.
When we had the housing market crash in 2008,
Yeah.
and we had inflation in the housing markets, have you noticed banks implementing some of those bad tendencies coming back more
Yeah,
recently?
driven by the federal government.
And I was speaking with my brother-in-law who was speaking to his broker, and he's noticed that there's inflation in the housing market. Do you see any foreseeable crashes again?
Great question. Again, LeeAnne Linderman, my opinion. Yes, I do see some crazy lending on the mortgage side of things happening again. The vast majority that I'm aware of, again, you know, I read constantly, is being driven by federal programs, just like what happened before, in what I think is a well-intentioned effort to try to get more people into homes. But what ethical bankers, what ethical mortgage lenders, like most, I won't just call out Zions Bank, I'll be honest with you, most mortgage lenders that are left today are ethical mortgage lenders. We don't want to put anybody in a house that we're going to have to pull them out of 3 years from now. And as far as real estate bubble, you know what? We have them. It's part of what happens in our economies. What we as consumers who buy homes have to do is to be smart. Don't overinvest. And you know what? Buying a home is such an emotional thing. Chris, my husband, I made a horrible emotional decision many years ago when we were transferred to Denver, and they were at a high, and Denver's economy at the time was driven by oil and gas. Oil and gas crashed, you know when that was, it's late 80s, yeah. It took, when we were transferred away from Denver, it took us 3 years to sell our house. When we finally sold it, we had to give away a Volkswagen with it. My husband worked for the company. And we sold it. We had to bring more money to the closing to pay off the mortgage than the buyer who was putting 20% down. We bought emotionally. It took us a long time to dig out of that hole. There are markets in the country right now that I'm very, very concerned about that are getting extremely overheated. And it's, economic cycles. It will happen again, but hopefully, because so many of those rogue mortgage lenders are no longer in business, we won't have nearly the depth of the pain that we had 10 years ago.
So you would say it would be a much smaller crash than it would have been that we saw in 2008?
That's the intent of the regulators who put all those unethical lenders out of business.
You talked a lot about competencies, and I'm curious, in today's world and given industry trends, in your opinion, what are the top 1 or 2 competencies that we could focus on to make sure that we're competitive?
Put me on the spot, why don't you? Have to boil it down to 1 or 2. Ability to lead through change. If an organization is not growing, they're dying. In order to grow, you need to change. So those people in the workforce who can effectively lead through change, not change for the sake of change, but change for the sake of improvement. Boy, so valuable. And if I can only name one more, it would be effective communication. My company is going through a reorganization right now that we announced June 1st of last year, and that's when my role was created. And we're going to be launching a new core banking platform, first U.S.-owned bank in the country. First. Expense, $500 million. But we will leapfrog over all other U.S.-owned banks. To be able, as much as we're communicating, because the change is occurring so quickly in my company, preparing for all these technological advancements in our systems. I was with a group of branch managers yesterday from all over the company. I pull them together quarterly, and I shouldn't have been stunned, but half of them did not know much about this core banking platform we're rolling out. And it's not because we're not communicating, it's because we're communicating so much. So those who can communicate very effectively, and to a previous slide, with vision. With vision. I think my time's up.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.